Hi, I'm Audrey Chapman. We're talking today about obsessive love. Do you know what obsessive love is? Well, it is usually someone who has deep longing, and they get it all confused with obsessive love. They think that's what it is, and in fact, it's a lot more complicated than that. I have a guest that's going to help us to break it down and understand it better, Dr. Monique Belton, co-author of The Essential Guide to Overcoming Obsessive Love. Dr. Belton is a licensed clinical psychologist. She's here to help us out. We're here at 202-319-7810 or 1-855-288-HURN. That's 202-319-7810 or 1-855-288-4876. Welcome to the show, Dr. Belton.
Yeah, Audrey.
It's great to have you. I reviewed your book, and of course you have many helpful things in it, but the first one that sort of jumped out at me is the quiz that you have, and so I'm going to review it quickly for the callers. You said, ask yourself, do you spend a lot of time wanting someone who is not available, either physically or emotionally? Do you consistently fantasize about someone? Then you said, do you believe that if you try hard enough, the other person will come around or learn to love you? You also said, do you think your love for this person is so great that it will be able to overcome her not wanting you, that she will eventually love you? Now, we know that this can also be replaced, the her with the him. Do you think you are the victim because someone has rejected you or won't agree to what you want? Do you constantly think about the other person so that you lose sleep, don't eat, or miss time at work? Do you believe your life is worthless without this person? Do you think this person is the only person who can make you happy? Do you call this person over and over or spend hours waiting for her to call? Do you go to her place of employment or home without an invitation? Do you send gifts even though she has asked you not to? Do you spend your days wondering what she's doing, who she is with? Do you check up on her to make sure she's where she says she is? And lastly, you said, have you followed her to find out where she's going? If you've answered yes to 2 or 3 of the above questions, then you may be obsessive. Obsessive love is thought processes, behaviors, and is often learned from past experiences. Can you tell us why you said that? That it is thought processes, behaviors, and is learned from past experiences?
Well, often the triggers are our childhood, early abandonment.
Okay.
Sometimes abandonment is actually physical, but it could be a parent with drugs and alcohol that isn't available.
Okay.
And you spend your time longing for your parent's attention.
Right.
You could have a sick sibling, and your parent is devoted to taking them to the hospital, to fixing them. Right. And you feel a need for that attention. And abuse and neglect are also big triggers.
All right. So abuse, neglect, it sounds like are the big ones.
But mostly a childhood where you spend longing to be loved. Right. Longing. Right. For someone to notice you.
Right.
And that the unavailable parent or love object is the one that you spend all your time focusing on, and not the love that is available to you.
So, in fact, fast forwarding into adulthood, you finally identify somebody that can focus on you, even though it's an unhealthy focus and a unhealthy attachment for yourself. You're finally being focused on.
Yes, and one of the tricks is in the beginning, it seems so simple, so clear, and instantly, quote, this is the person. Right. And it doesn't look like there are any problems at all because they care about you.
One of the callers I had earlier, it sounded like she's in such denial about the fact that it was like it was all the other person, and they're the ones that were kind of harassing her and wouldn't let go of her, and she is on top of the situation because she's trying to take care of them and rescue them without any awareness. So it's part of the trigger is the denial that you have a deep need to be wanted and to be loved and to be cared for.
It is. That's one of the tricky things about it is many times you feel it's all the other person.
Right.
And don't understand how much pleasure that you receive from the attention.
Right.
Yes, it could be scary or, quote, it's too much. But if they stop calling or they're not texting you 20 times a day, you're wondering, what's going on? What happened?
Right.
And you usually will trigger them by texting or calling them to find out and restart that cycle because you really need that attention.
Right. All right. So, and you also have in the book, which I think is important to talk about, the stages of healthy relationships. And the stages are romantic love, learning about each other, acceptance of positive and negative qualities in the partner, commitment, and stability. So obsessive love doesn't have those stages?
Obsessive love is usually pretty instantaneous. That fabulous first meeting.
Swept off your feet kind of love.
Absolutely. It looks like the movies. And the movies seem to suggest that is love.
Right.
Where you know immediately. You don't need to know. And one of the things that should worry anyone is when you feel that you know them instantly and you're not acting like they're a stranger.
Right.
You're reacting to something in them that triggers a memory of someone in the past because they are a stranger. And when you don't feel a stranger as a stranger, who are they?
Right.
And if you haven't had a lot of great relationships, either in your childhood or in your adulthood, that's really a warning flag.
Right, right.
And usually it's the one that makes you the most relaxed. Like, oh, I think I've known them all my life.
All your life, right.
And you've known them 2 hours.
Right. It's maybe sometimes a person that some individuals say, oh, they're like a soulmate. We were on this planet before.
And what planet have you lived on so far?
Yeah.
This planet has not been the best of planets.
Right, right.
You need to realize that it's probably the wrong chemistry, not the right chemistry.
Right. All right, well, we're going to take a caller, and you can jump in and help them out at any point if you would like. Welcome to the Audrey Chapman Show. You're on the air.
Good morning, Dr. Chapman and Dr. Belton, and good morning. Now, my situation is I've been in a 5-month relationship with my friend, and he's been hurt by his ex, which has really traumatized him. And this has caused him to be obsessive as far as with trust issues with me. And if I'm not available to him, he says that he's been rejected. He says abusive things that hurt. And Thursdays is a day that I'm off, and it's usually a bad day because I've been off for years on a Thursday, and I do things that's personal, and I take care of business. But later in the evening, I spend time with him, but it's always an issue. And so I'm thinking he actually admitted that he needs to seek help, but I don't really think that he will follow through with it. And he does definitely admit that he has trust issues, but it's been for the last 4 months out of 5 that we've been really just going through it as far as trust.
And how soon did he end his first relationship that the two of you met and got involved?
Well, he said that it was at least 6 months after.
What do you think about that, Dr. Belton?
I think it's interesting that she said he says.
Right. I do too. I do too. I bet it was less than that.
Not possibly. I'm saying this because he's told me so. I've caught him in lies.
Right.
So that's why I say he says.
Right.
Because I'm not quite sure if I can believe it.
Right. Right. I suspected it was less time than that, and that so basically he's not even over what went on in the last situation, but he tried to handle it by moving on to the next person. And some part of you was attracted to this man that needed rescuing. And I'm not saying that you necessarily were aware of identifying with it that way, but that's what happened. What do you think the situation is, Dr. Belton? And if there are any additional questions you want to ask her, go right ahead.
Well, I'm wondering what she finds so attractive about this wounded man. Why, knowing after the first month he was possessive and a little bit controlling. He had good reason, quote unquote. And I'm not saying it wasn't good reason, but why she feels she pulled in closer rather than slowed it down.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay. To be totally honest, the first month, I did not see that. And then he told me later on that about a situation that happened to him.
Right. And you were already connected.
Then I started thinking back to maybe little things that I saw, and I'm like, okay, because in the beginning, it was a couple of things, but very minor. And you try to give a person time, but then I was like, that's why he did that. At first I thought maybe, that's nothing, because he would say something about possibly the way that my dress fitted me. It was attractive and nice, but your behind is a little showing too much. The form of my dress, perhaps.
Right. It was a very positive thing, but then at the end it was a negative.
Yes. Then I realized that he said that he had a problem after I found the other issues. He would always say that's the problem, because his wife was shaped like me. And he said that's the problem.
All right, so we're down to about a minute, so I don't know if...
Can I just tell you one quick thing then? My rule to my clients is you don't know anyone for the first 3 months. You think you do, and the more you think you do, the less you do. Because things show up after 90 days, after 100 days.
I would also add that if he doesn't go and get help, then you get help so that you can figure yourself out and also make a determination as to whether you're going to stay in this or to get help so that you can get yourself out of it. All right?
Okay, more likely, or him together, or myself.
No. The hope is that he goes, but you go anyway, even if he doesn't. Yes. All right.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Yes, it can feel like love, but be something that may not be good for you or the person that you think you love. It could be that you're obsessed. Dr. Monique Belton and I want to help you out. Give us a call, 202-319-7810 or 1-855-288-4876. This is the Audrey Chapman Show on HUR Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141. Welcome back. This is Audrey Chapman. We're talking today about obsessive love. Do you want to know what obsessive love is? Well, do you think of nothing else besides the relationship, sometimes ignoring other responsibilities? Do you continually worry about your partner's cheating? Do you sometimes accuse her or him of infidelity even without any evidence? You may check up on them throughout the day, driving by their workplace, calling continually? Do you persistently question their commitment to the relationship? You resent any time that person spends with other people and may manipulate them so that they will only spend time with you? If so, you are struggling with obsessive love. To help us out today is Dr. Monique Belton. She's a clinical psychologist. She's also the co-author of Essential Guide to Overcoming Obsessive Love. We're still here to help you out at 202-319-7810 or 1-855-288-4876 if you want to get in on the conversation. All right, Dr. Belton, do you want to say anything before we go to the next caller?
I just wanted to point out that list, if you feel that that's your partner, you are also an obsessive lover.
Okay.
Because you're in of obsessive love relationship.
All right, and you need to be very aware of that. All right, we're going to take the next caller. Welcome to the Audrey Chapman Show. You're on the air.
Hello.
Good morning. You're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Ms. Chapman, Dr. Belton. I'm just calling because I am an obsessive lover, and I've been in a relationship and married for 30 years. I have 5 children, and this man has done just about everything humanly possible to degrade me and, knock me down, pull me down, drag me down. And I can't seem, even after spending 7 months in an abused women's shelter and him moving out of our home into a 1-bedroom apartment, which made my girls have to live in a shelter for 7 months. I'm now in a place of my own, me and my girls, and I've let him back into my life. And each time he's around and everything, I feel, we're playing house. He has everything that he wants except for the responsibility of a wife and a family.
Why did you take him back?
Excuse me?
Why did you take him back?
I just kind of really felt sorry for him being alone and me having the children and, the distance between us. And, I really felt sorry for him. And in a lot of ways, I do feel sorry for him.
You feel more sorry for him than you do yourself?
Yeah.
Boy, is that telling.
Because I feel like I've been blessed with everything to make my life beautiful and wonderful, and he's left with nothing, but he brought it on himself.
But you were the person that was abused and as a result had to leave your house and go in a shelter.
Yes.
Did I hear that correctly? Dr. Belton, what do you think?
Well, I have a question. Did you lapse in your contact with the shelter groups and the help that you were receiving?
Well, once you're discharged, you're discharged.
So you really didn't have support anymore.
Right.
But often they will refer you to an outside person so that you have some, way to transition. Was that not offered?
No, it wasn't. But the program that I'm involved with, I do go to therapy once a week, but we don't address these kind of issues.
What kind of program are you involved in?
It's a housing program.
Oh.
Supportive housing.
Oh, okay. It has nothing to do with the emotional part of you. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a requirement.
Why did you ask
therapy?
Right. Why did you ask that question, Dr. Belton?
Well, because I think her way of thinking is something that would be really helpful to change.
Right.
She's taking responsibility for the situation.
Yeah.
She's thinking she's the savior.
She's the savior, yeah.
And once you do that, the other person is more important than you, which probably was a thought process, during the marriage. Other people, whether her child, children, or him. Right. And he's got her back into thinking she's responsible for all the good, and later she's going to be responsible for all
the bad. Mm-hmm.
I have been responsible for all the bad.
Do you believe that, or that is true?
Excuse me?
I'm asking, do you believe that, or is it truly true?
No, I don't believe that, but that's the way he's made me. That's the position he's put me in. Even after him abusing me,
but you've accepted some of that belief. Unfortunately. I said, unfortunately, you do accept a lot of the ways that he thinks. Not consciously, but when you act, it's as if what he says is true.
And there's a victim mentality about the way you think about yourself. The words that you use, he made me, he put me there, he, is as if you have absolutely no ability to make a different choice for yourself. And I don't know.
The way I felt throughout the whole relationship.
Yeah. So you gave up your power almost from the onset of this relationship. You handed it over to him.
Well, one thing I know, I've suffered a lot of loss in my life. Both of my parents, my brother, who I was very close to, a lot of loss in my younger years. And, to lose the relationship with him, it just seems like, a failure or another loss. And then he got sick with congestive heart failure. So, of course, I felt like, okay, I can't, shut him out. We have children together, and every time I break it off, he, oh, I'm sick. Oh, I've been to the doctor. Oh, they want to put me in the hospital. And
he works on you really hard.
Yeah.
And you feel this way, but what's characteristic is also you have a set of thoughts that actually feel quite rational but are a bit distorted around who's in control and feeling controlled, or that you have to control him. And if you can access, and usually there are some kind of access, whether there are colleges that have graduate programs and can work in certain ways, a cognitive behavioral focus could probably help you a lot to look at how am I really thinking about this that makes me feel so badly.
I want to break it off, but I'm scared.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if you just heard what Dr. Belton said, and we're going to let you go, is that you need to get some support and some outside help so that you can be able to be supported to do so. And I think she was suggesting that there are places around. I don't know, what town are you calling from?
Potomac, Maryland.
Okay, so you're right in this area, Potomac, Maryland. There's certainly places. Montgomery County has one of the best mental health facilities in the area. If you just called the county and asked them for the nearest mental health counseling facility, and then when you call them, ask for someone that specializes in cognitive therapy. That would be that would be very helpful to you. And Montgomery County often has free services, so in the area of mental health. So you're in a good county to be able to get help. All right.
Okay.
All right. Take care now.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. We're going to take the next caller. Welcome to the Audrey Chapman Show. You're on the air.
Hi, Audrey and Dr. Belton.
Belton. Uh-huh.
Hi, I'm sorry. I was calling. I'm kind of I am in an obsessive relationship. And I guess also I would say that I'm a rescuer too. And I started out, I felt as though that he needed me to help him get through what he was going through, a lot of problems that he was going through. And I kind of took him on more as a son relationship than a partnership relationship. Right. And so I don't know how to break free from
your role as a parent. It's hard to leave this quote unquote child and let them grow up and find their way, because it's set up as a parent-child situation, which meant that it was a setup for failure almost from the onset. Dr. Belton, is this not a very typical kind of pattern in these obsessive relationship connections, that often the rescuer has set themselves up to be either the what you call the savior or the parent toward the other person, and they feel compelled to try to save this person from some awful thing? Is that a pretty typical pattern?
Yes, it is a typical pattern. Pattern of control, either that you have to help them control themselves and succeed, and that you feel responsible for the pain or suffering, or sometimes you feel that they're controlling you. But either way, the whole idea of control and being controlled. And what is going on in
and what's
your
the
life
payoff?
that needs help, that instead of focusing on controlling or advancing yourself, that it's easier to look at someone who needs more help and that you're, quote, on top because of the distance between what's going on in your life and theirs? Is there something that really you're not focusing on with
In your life?
in your own life because his is too overwhelming to focus on?
I guess that I'm not focused. I'm thinking more in a parent role than I am. As a parent, you try and do everything you can to make sure that your child is all right. And
how many years are you in this relationship? Or is it months? Because you're not really the parent. You don't know him that well. You didn't birth him.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the relationship?
Oh, I would say probably about a year now. Maybe. I would think a year.
And is this a pattern of feeling more like you're responsible for your mate's success or failure?
Yes.
So in all your other relationships, you pretty much have set things up this way as well?
Pretty much. I've always, I guess I would say I've always been a rescuer.
So who parented you growing up?
Well, I was adopted, and you know, so they were older. My parents were older. They were more like grandparents, and so you
really don't feel that you've had quote unquote real parents,
right?
So you become the parent to everybody else that you wish you had had.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. And the problem is, it can't be done in that way. You can't make up for what you wished you had had and what you should have had by becoming it. It just doesn't work. It's not constructive.
And it makes it worse because there's a greater emptiness for that wanting to be cared for and taken care of.
Right.
But in a good, balanced relationship, it's balanced. Sometimes you do, and sometimes they do.
Right.
Sometimes you're supported, and sometimes you support. But this is very unbalanced, and you know that.
I do, and I just don't know how to stop the cycle. You know, it's a lot of times you have
to think about and believe that you are not his savior. If he succeeds or he fails, it's not you to blame. Because right now I think you have the blaming, fallacy of thought, and that if you don't, no one will, and he'll come to disaster, and it's your fault. And that's a terrible burden.
It is.
And it's not true. The only way that he can be successful in his life is to learn through trial and error, as we all do, and see that he's able, even when he falls down, that he's able to get himself up. But he doesn't get to have that opportunity because you're always there scooping him up.
That's true.
So you're really not helping him, you're actually hindering him.
Okay.
So can you challenge your thinking about this and see it in a different way?
Yes, I can. I just have to, realize that he is his own person, and I'm my own person, and I just have to let him be.
Right. And there's a difference between being responsive towards someone and being responsible for them. The big difference between those two things. And you want to be responsive but not responsible. You get that?
I do.
All right, so you're going to have to really work hard on that and be checking constantly with yourself to make sure that you're not sliding in that other direction. And if you find that you can't do it on your own, then this is where you want to hook up with a counselor who can kind of be your coach for a while and help you to get through the transition. Once you get through it, you can do it on your own. All right?
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Take care. All right. Any thoughts about this, Dr. Belton? It is interesting how people find themselves going in this direction of rescuing or being a parent.
Well, sometimes the most things that you need, you wind up giving to others with the hope that they will give that back to you. But what usually happens is they are the least possible candidate of actually being able to fulfill those needs. They're attracted to you because you are going to give them those things. But they don't really, and in the beginning you think, well, for right now, he needs help.
And I'll give it because eventually he's going to be able to give it back to me.
Oh, absolutely, when I need, but not realizing that they're not really capable, or when you do need them, they will just not be there. Because that's not their basis of their belief about what the relationship is about.
Absolutely. We're here at 202-319-7810 or 1-855-288-4876 if you want to be a part of this conversation. We're talking about obsessive love. As an obsessive lover, you believe if you are persistent enough, your partner will love you. You just heard a good example of that. You believe if you did not receive security and acceptance as a child, you may develop a dependency on a relationship as an adult. Physical attraction is sometimes mistaken for love. And you believe you are in love with someone you have a sexual relationship with, even if you have not developed an emotional connection. A lot of these relationships are highly intense around the sexual connection. And does that cause a lot of confusion for some people? They equate that with love?
You confuse attraction with love. That's what that immediate, I fell in love right away. I knew it was the person for me. That's an attraction, and attraction is not wrong or bad, but you don't actually know anything about the person. You don't know their ethics. You don't know their morals. You don't know their point of view. You don't know their jealousy. You don't know really anything about them, but you feel, and it's just all about feeling. And feeling is a good start, but you have to also be using your head to see, are we compatible? Does this really make me feel good? Not in the first minute, because you always go back to that first feeling of how it was, and not how I feel every day. And how I feel every day is pretty bad. But in the beginning, they made me feel so good, and I want to get back to that. Because you think that's the person. That initial dating, quote unquote, if it's dating, or initial meeting is the person and not the one you see every day.
All right.
And there's the intensity, the speed, the short time, and then the anxiety when you're separated.
All of that plays a role. So obsessive behavior is jealousy, control, harassment, mailing something to the person, or the internet, or in these days it's also texting, drive-bys, and unannounced visits. That's pretty much what...
Those are some externalized behaviors.
Right.
But then there's the internalized, the thought process.
The thought processes.
Where you're consumed, you're always thinking, are they calling? They're calling too much. Why aren't they calling? What are they doing that they're not calling? And catastrophizing. If I don't hear from them for 5 hours, they're breaking up with me. Oh my God, I can't take it.
Or they've gone on with somebody else.
Yes.
All right, we're going to take one more caller. Welcome to the Outreach. Oh, no more caller. Okay. All right. So, can we talk a little bit about breaking up, since you kind of alluded to that? If they're breaking up, what's the best way to to put an end to these obsessive attachments? Is there a way to do that so that it doesn't set up the pattern?
That it doesn't set up the pattern.
Yeah, when you break up with an obsessive lover, are there particular things that you need to be aware of as you're breaking up with this person? That either if you're the person who's obsessed with them, or vice versa, is there a way to let them down easy, as they say?
I think the letting them down easy is your rationalization. There is no easy.
Okay.
And that's the hard part, because one, they don't get the point. They'll just try harder if you are trying to slowly pull away. And thus, you really have to be ready to have a real break off.
So you need to have a plan and be ready to do it.
A plan. You know, for some people, you definitely need to, when you're ready to break off in a public place, because there's a lot of external controls with that, and rather than saying what you really are going to say at home, then you might, well, let's just for a little while, maybe not call it, you know, and all of that is like, no, you know, I need to call you. I get anxious if I don't call you. You know, you're going to back out.
Right.
In a private place. In a public place, I think you also need to really write down what you want to say and the reasons for and against in your own mind long before you do it. Mm-hmm. And understand
the reasons for leaving.
Well, yes. Mm-hmm. What's not working and what is working. Because if you keep a list over a week or two, you're going to see one side. You know, just to get a paper and split it down, you know, reasons to stay together, reasons to break up. It's going to get very long on one side.
Right.
And sometimes seeing it, even though you feel it every day, seeing it helps.
Right.
But no, they're not going to agree with you. Okay? They're going to say, well, I can make you love me. You just need to give me a little bit more time.
Right.
Or I can do this. Or they'll start giving you gifts. Or taking you places. Or things that you're vulnerable to.
Absolutely. So you got to be aware of
agreement. You know, it would be nice if it was a non-obsessive relationship and both people look at each other and say, you know, it really isn't working, is it? Mm-hmm. I feel so sad. I had the hopes for this.
But in these obsessive situations, you're not going to get both parties.
No, it's going to work out.
Right.
It's just your brother-in-law.
Right.
It's just this. It's my working. It's going to change.
Right.
You're going to love me.
Right.
And sometimes people totally believe one person has control of the love.
Yep.
And I'll make you love me. Like the song.
Yeah.
That's for a song. And songs are usually pretty disturbed.
Right.
Thinking.
Right. Yep. So, if you've made that decision that this is unhealthy and that you want out,
you have to make rules for yourself.
You have to make room for this process. And what you say in your book is, think carefully about your relationship. Is your relationship worth saving, or is it doomed? You also say, decide you want to leave. The first step in leaving an obsessive lover is making up your mind to do it. And then, of course, having a process in which to do that. Know you can leave. Your partner may make you feel guilty. He might focus on your weaknesses, making you doubt that you can survive without him or her. But know that you can do this. Create a plan and tell people you trust about your decision to leave, because apparently that is really helpful. I believe in the buddy system, or
accountability.
The accountability, because I think it really does help when you're trying to go through a process. And you also point out to people that you should let go and not I guess, drag it out, because I think that's probably where people get into trouble also. And,
dragging it out is more attractive because they're going to just come in faster.
Right.
I'm just going to fix this. I can do this. Whatever it is that you said you needed, I can do that now.
Right.
And then you feel like, I got to give them a chance
right.
to do that. And you back off, and it teaches them, if I just try harder,
right,
she'll come back.
Yeah. And understand that with loss, you are going to go through some changes, some emotions, some feelings, some depression, some sadness, some fear, some anxiety. All of that is going to happen. If you try to avoid that, that'll just pull you right back into the cycle.
But you can't just take something away without inserting something.
Right.
So whether you might decide to get on an exercise program, reconnect with your sorority or an old friend that you've been neglecting.
Sure.
Attend a support group.
Have some support. So we're here at 202-319-7810 or 1-855-288-4876. This is the Audrey Chapman Show on HUR Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141. Welcome back. This is the Audrey Chapman Show. We're talking today about obsessive love. If you've been listening, you know now that it is not healthy love. It's about longing. And my guest is Dr. Monique Belton. She is the clinical psychologist and co-author of The Essential Guide to Overcoming Obsessive Love. We're still here at 202-319-7810 or 1-855-288-4876. Dr. Belton, one of the things that I noted in your book that I think is very important for us to talk about, and that is how self-image influences your relationships. And why did you put that in the book? Dr. Belton?
So important. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay. That usually in an obsessive relationship, you're always looking out at the other and what he needs. And I'm just going to talk because most of our callers today have been women.
Right.
But what the partner needs, what the deficiencies are in them, which means that you don't really look at yourself.
Right.
And that your self-image internally probably is not so good. The kind of attention that an obsessive lover gives you is a false kind of build-up for what you don't really feel about yourself.
Yeah, it's what you don't have, or what you don't think, what you think you don't have.
What you don't think you have.
Right.
Because maybe you do have it, but you're so focused on the other. And often you're really trying to build something that doesn't feel right, inside.
Right.
And that you're vulnerable in some way, whether it is the self-image from a child, or you're vulnerable because you're on the rebound, or you're very unhappy with other parts of your life, and you can focus on the partner. You're financially strapped. You might be self-conscious about your appearance, and, they love you so much, it's unconditional. And, of course, very soon you find out the conditions, the control that you must obey to get that externalized esteem, where it still doesn't fill your own self-esteem. You really don't love yourself, and you're looking for this, what seems like unconditional love in the first month or two or weeks or days. And I had mentioned before the 3-month rule.
Yeah.
It really is important because what you get in the beginning is what any relationship starts like. But when you start to get the red flags, then you find out it's not a healthy love. It's not a healthy attraction.
Right.
But they start out on a positive note. Who would go with someone when it doesn't start out positively?
Right.
But you don't pull back if you don't have good self-esteem. When the negative, the red flags start coming, you don't go, I can't take this. I don't need to take this. And you say it in your head, but then you take it.
Right.
And you teach them you are going to take it.
Yes, and once that happens, it's all downhill, right?
It is pretty much downhill. There's more negative than positive.
Right. So
but you're seeking what initially was happening or what you felt was happening in the relationship. He loves me so much.
Right.
He'd do anything for me. But then it becomes if or but or whatever conditions, might be.
Well, you've got a self-image inventory in there, which I think is important in your book, and you want to really give people a real sense of what true love is. You talk about strengths and weaknesses, changing your attitude. You have a whole section on counseling, which I do think is important. We've alluded to that a little bit, but the importance of it and how it can really help you find the causes of the obsession.
But then you need to make changes.
Right.
And changes are as hard as really understanding who you are.
Right, but it can be helpful to have someone to support you while you go through
it is.
And identify making the changes. Because you're going to probably a few times relapse, right? Is that pretty much the norm?
Absolutely. Right. Just like an addiction, relapse and learning through that and making it a shorter and shorter cycle. Right. Relapse.
So you say a therapist or counselor offers support and encouragement when you're looking into your past for reasons for your present behavior. A therapist or counselor helps in developing specific strategies for dealing with anger, resolving conflict, to help your relationship grow stronger. Counseling for obsessive love is a way to improve your outlook on life, but is not a relationship fixer. As you make progress in counseling, you'll be able to recognize obsessive behavior and immediately corrects them. Then you talk about then you have a section for obsessive lovers breaking the cycle, coming to terms with your role, which is pretty much what you've been helping some of the callers with. They have to come to terms with their role and take accountability.
That's the hardest.
This is not easy to do.
This is the hardest because you're always pointing out. And in 12-step groups, they say, and people do this while you're listening, if you point out at others, like a gun, or just point out, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you.
Wow.
And that's the biggest part. He does this. He says this.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. But what do you say to yourself? What do you do? And that's where another person comes biggest into play. You have been very masterful with the callers and helping them to say, look at, but what about you?
Right.
What about you? I see that's one of your big gifts.
Yes. Often people do, however, hear it as, wait a minute, you're blaming the victim. I'm not the problem. He or she is the problem. But if you can, how are you going to take your power back and be in control of your own life if you don't start holding yourself accountable?
One of the keys is that you can't control anyone. You can hardly control yourself.
Right.
And understanding that, really getting that, helps you to stop focusing on the other, because you can't do really anything about the other.
The other
you're
person.
Struggling to do something about yourself.
Right. You're only in control of yourself.
If you're lucky.
That is the main thing in life for all of us. So personal accountability is taking responsibility for your role in how your life has turned out. When you accept personal accountability, you no longer believe things just happen to you or place the blame for events or feelings on someone else. That's a quote straight from your book, and I think it's excellent, which is why I wanted to make sure that I shared it.
Okay.
Because I think that's really an important thing for a person to understand. And making the commitment to change is just that. It's a commitment. It means when it gets rough, when it gets challenging, when it gets scary, when you think, it would be easy to go back, that you stay with your commitment. And the commitment is to yourself, right?
Yes.
For the change. It's
for yourself. And I want to make the point that the reason that I talked about your thoughts is there's plenty of evidence that if you change your thoughts, your feelings can change. And you can't actually just change your feelings, like don't feel that way. But you can change the way you think about things and your situation and your options. And once you make those changes or see, I'm falling into distorted thinking, your feelings can change.
Right.
And that's why you want to look at that.
And then you talk about finding love on your own terms. I think that is so potent, that statement. Finding love on your own terms. Because often people allow other people to define the love they deserve rather than having your own terms for the kind of quality and kind of values and morals that you want to have with someone else.
A big key when you leave this kind of relationship is to actually think about what it is you want,
right,
and what the person is going to be like.
Right.
And if you meet someone, take that list out and see if they really meet it versus they like me, and that's enough.
Well, I like you, Dr. Monique Belton. You've really helped us out a lot on the topic today and given my listeners a lot to think about. I want to thank you so much for joining us and for helping us out. Again, you are Dr. Monique Belton, co-author of Essential Guide to Overcoming Obsessive Love. Obsessive and controlling behaviors are learned behaviors. You need to understand that. The first step in change is telling yourself you will change. Repeat it over and over and over. And write a list of reasons you want to change and read that list on a daily basis. I want to thank you all for tuning in and for sharing your very personal stories. Next week, you got a toxic man in your life? You love him, or should you leave him? Give me a call. Show information is always available, as well as counseling referral lists and my information about counseling on audreychapman.com and through the blog, WHUR.com, Audrey Chapman Show. I want to thank my producer, Teresa Caldwell, our technical producer, Lauren Harry. I'm Audrey Chapman. Let's do this again next week.